Counselor Mainini,
Here.
Counselor Shaw,
Here.
Counselor Schlack, here, Counselor Wolf, and Counselor President Hu. Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City team or city council, any non-agenda items this evening?
None from us, Mayor.
Oh, all right. We don't have any proclamations or recognitions, so we will move on to public comment. If you'd like to provide public comment by phone or video, please call in or log in now to get into the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101. Anyone who wants to comment in person should sign up at the sign-up sheet at the back of the room. We will start with follow-up to previous public comment with Assistant City Manager Church.
Good evening. Thanks, Council. Last week we had one in-person comment with feedback on our parking program. That community member received a response from Community Development Director Kirkman. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We will not be hearing from the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce tonight. So we have our Tigard High School Student Envoy, which is the THS Student Body President, Maddie Vogel. Welcome, Maddie. Lovely to see you in person.
Hi, thank you for having me. So starting off with our first few weeks of our winter quarter, it's been really strong. This is quarter 2. Definitely some finals before winter break. We do head into the holiday break after next week. Winter sports are in full-fledged, and it's been very successful so far. Just continuing with our high school vision for student success is that all students will graduate choice ready. This has a lot to do just with the season of college applications. We have financial aid workshops, Common App, things like that. We also celebrated our athletes that are continuing their athletic careers in college on the 13th. They did a little signing day in our gym, which we will also do again in the spring for more commits. So it's always very exciting. We have our motto, we care, we seek knowledge, and we never give up. Very exciting. Advanced Leadership has been very busy planning for the rest of the year. We were able to attend the Three Rivers League Leadership Conference that is now happening again 2 weeks ago. I thought it was great. We met with leaders from all schools like Oswego, Lake Ridge, Oregon City, Westland, and Tualatin. We have also started to just kind of wrap up looking like plans for the spring prom, Unity Week. Unity Week's been a big focus. That's happening in February. Definitely more details with that to come. There's going to be a lot more community involvement this year, so that should be good. We were able to announce our freshman class president, Morgan Leeper, so now we have a direct contact with our freshman class if needed. Seniors are working on senior bonding events, our senior sweatshirt designs that are coming out. We do a free sweatshirt giveaway every year as kind of like graduation gift and graduation details. Juniors are starting the prom planning process, which starts way earlier than you would expect because it takes a long time. So they're starting with that and working with our Unity Week committee. Sophomores are executing winter formal that will be happening in January and working with the freshmen as well to make it an underclassmen event that we look to start as kind of a traditional thing for our underclassmen so they get the fun of a prom-like event but not going to prom. Leadership events, activities, we planned our Friendsgiving. I say we, that was my old committee. No longer me, but kind of a part of it. Friendsgiving was planned, as well as our Secret Snowflake, which is our version of like a Secret Santa at school. Assemblies is working on our winter assembly happening next Friday. It's definitely one of the biggest, very celebratory for the break. Communications has been finding new ways to connect with the student body, like doing interviews at lunch. It's been a big hit. ICCF successfully put up our club wall, which I think is one of the best things that I've seen done at Tigard. It's just a wall with every club information. So if you are looking to join a club, it's just right there in our comments. HR RAC, Human Rights is what that stands for, is Unity Week planning, and Spirit is getting a jump on winter sports, as well as Spirit sticks are being made, like the sticks that I'm not really sure what the concept is, but I'm excited to see it in action, so should be good. Sports, basketball is doing great. They started this weekend on Friday. They did a tournament over the weekend. Our girls won on Saturday. Swimming, meets are starting next week, I believe, so they're just getting some practice in. Wrestling, meets are happening right now next Friday, as well as this last week. Dance brought home 2 first-place trophies at their competition 2 weeks ago, and then a first place and a second place last weekend. And they have category champs this upcoming weekend at Wilsonville, so they're doing great. And Cheers working on basketball routines as well as competition routines. Arts and affinity groups, Unity Week, like I said, mentioned that a lot because it's kind of been taking over multiple areas of the school. Roundtable meeting is being held tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm unable to make it, but it's a really good way for our affinity leaders to come together, and those are once a month. Night of the Living Dead was our play, and it went very well. We had 2 very successful weekends of it, and now we have a spring musical coming in March, I believe. And then band has a winter concert on Thursday at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. So if anybody would like to see some winter or hear some winter tunes, that would be the time to go. And last but not least is service and policy. So NHS and Service Club had a joint event this last weekend that decorated houses for the holidays for old people in King City and Summerfield. 54 houses were decorated, which is pretty intense, but it was great. It was a really good morning, even though it was pouring rain, but it was fun. FBLA, which is our Future Business Leaders of America, are doing the Giving Tree. That's always a big success, and they're doing some wrapping workshops. KGW Toy Drive, we did a collaboration with our NHS, and we had a toy drive on Saturday, lots of gifts donated. And our Leukemia Lymphoma Society is starting back up for the season, which will be going through our spring when we have a charity basketball tournament. That's it. Lots happening, but hopefully it should slow down with the break, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, a lot happening. And I mean, the year is basically over, so it makes sense to start thinking about planning for all of those spring things. My goodness, this year is flying by. Does anyone have any questions for what's going on? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Maddie.
Thank you.
Next, we have our police chief and department update with Chief McDonald. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Jamie McDonald. I am your police chief. Excuse me. And I have your November dashboard update or strategic dashboard update. And I wanted to bring up, this is something that I've revisited a handful of times over the year. This is something we started new in January, was putting up the heat map that shows where the calls for service were in the community in the month of November. And you'll notice, and one of the reasons I chose this to show you this month is if you get away from Highway 99, which is the ones with the largest numbers closest to it, and then 388 is actually City Hall where we're at right now. A lot of calls come into the lobby or are generated here. It's almost always the highest number of calls for service. But if you get off of 99 and basically the 217 corridor, it's pretty amazing how consistent those spots are around the rest of the community. And so I bring that up for a couple of reasons. One, to show that our calls for service are spread out pretty equally around the community, and that there aren't any real, I would call, trouble spots, so to speak. And we use this data to help identify areas that we may need to focus on more. So we do see spikes from time to time, but for the month of November, we didn't really see any spikes that brought any unusual attention to us. So sometimes we'll see spikes in certain parts of the community, and we use that data to help direct where we send our resources. So next slide, please. And then I just wanted to kind of tack on to the calls for service conversation. So as you can see, this November versus last November, we were almost in a dead heat for the same number of calls for service, both dispatch calls and self-initiated. So self-initiated was down a little bit more. As you can see, we've trended up for self-initiated, which that's where officers get to go out and be more proactive. So we're up about 20% for the year, which is a good thing. That's why the green dot is next to it. You want our officers to have more opportunity to be out, be doing proactive work than having to be reactive to those dispatched calls for service. So we're up, 2,700 calls, self-initiated calls for the year, which is pretty great. So the other thing that I wanted to note is the online crime reports. So we started a couple of years ago with a program that allows community members to fill out an online report. Some people don't want to bother us. They don't want to wait for a call back from a police officer. They might have something simple that qualifies to be an online report. For example, it could be a theft call with no suspect information. It could be a car that was broken into that didn't have any suspect information. And so they can opt to do that. An officer then will review it later and then make sure that they get the community member gets some follow-up with a case number and any follow-up questions that we might have. And so as you can see, this year to date, we're up 64% in the amount of times that it's been used by our community members. So it has trended up significantly. It was something that we continued to hear from people in the community. Hey, we'd love to have this option. We don't necessarily always want to bother a police officer, but they still want to make the report, which we appreciate because we know that a lot of times people don't want to be inconvenienced, so they just don't even call us. This is starting to pick up some of that, where we're actually getting some of that information that we maybe had been missing in the past. We knew it was happening, that somebody had been a crime victim, but it just wasn't getting reported. And we feel confident that this is actually picking that up. So, for example, year to date, there's 1,278 reports that have been taken that a police officer didn't have to go and take, which is probably most of those are actually additional ones that we wouldn't have gotten reported to us anyway. But nonetheless, some of those spared the time of an officer to go focus on doing something else, which could be part of why self-initiated continues to trend up for the year, which we like. So that's all I have for today. If there's any questions about anything that was in the dashboard, I'd be happy to answer those, or any other questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions? Have a wonderful night.
All right, thank you.
There were no public comments, written public comments received by Monday at noon. Deputy City Recorder Raymundo, has anyone signed up to speak in person? Not at this time. Thank you. Mr. Wold, are there any phone callers in the queue or anyone wishing to testify by video this evening?
Mayor, there are no callers in the queue and no requests for a video comment.
Okay, thank you so much. We will go to Assistant City Manager Tritch for the City Manager Report.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, councilors, and glad to see so many members of our community and teammates this evening. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to share that the Parks Division did an amazing job decorating Universal Plaza for the holiday tree lighting last week. I was glad to see so many members of our community joined us. It was packed. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I hope you'll swing by Universal Plaza to enjoy the tree and the setup for the plaza. Our recreation program also organized a festival fleece fun run last Friday and had 57 participants run and walk through downtown Tigard to the Tigard Heritage Trail and back to Universal Plaza. It was a great event. Also pleased to share about our third leaf disposal and food drive event that took place this last Saturday. Even with the rain, there were over 100 cars in the first hour, and we will get you the numbers for donations at a later date. A couple of updates from Tigard Library. The Tigard Community Seed Library is now 6 months old, and during that time, almost 300 community members have accessed almost 1,000 seed packets. We've seen donations of more than 30 types of seeds. The Seed Library is focused on local food resilience, biodiversity, and sustainable gardening, and can be found on the library's second floor. And finally, for aspiring gardeners, there's another event you can anticipate coming Sunday, December 15th at the library. It's a winter wildlife event. It's a habitat workshop to share information about eco-friendly and low-waste strategies to provide food, water, and shelter. And there'll be a hands-on activity. Folks can register at the library's website. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the report? Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
Not a question, but just a comment. Mayor, I'm sure you'll talk about the tree lighting, but I participated in the Fleece Fun Run. I got to help guide people, and it was just fun to see community members running in everything from pajamas to ugly sweaters, and just really enjoying the holiday run. So it was with dogs, children, and it was just a fun event. So thanks to our Parks and Rec.
Yeah, no, our Parks and Rec team did a great job getting Universal Plaza ready, and so thankful to partner with the Tigard Downtown Association, who really put on the event, or Tigard Downtown Alliance that put on the event that we get to partner with. Universal Plaza is an excellent new site for it, and I had many community members tell me how excited they were for the new space. So yeah, excited so many community members started this season with us. The next item is our consent agenda, and we will be acting as the City Council and the Local Contract Review Board. The consent agenda is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. On the consent agenda today, we are receiving and filing the November 5th 2024 election canvas of votes. And for that, the city of Tigard had 5 council positions on the ballot. There were 2 two-year terms, and the new councilors will be joining us in January are Faraz Gadusi and Heather Robbins. There were 3 positions for the 4-year term, and joining us, or continuing on with us, if you will be Maureen Wolf, Jeanette Shaw, and Jake Schlack. So excited to sort of formally check this off and receive the official election results. The additional item on the consent agenda today is the McDonald Street Engineering Services. For those of you who continue to let us know, rightfully so, that McDonald feels unsafe because of the lack of sidewalks and people trying to cross the street. Good news for you, we are continuing along the process of seeing what it's going to take, and we're starting with engineering services to let us know what needs to be done to the road and how much it's going to cost to continue to move it forward. So that is the contract that is on the consent agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any questions or comments? Any discussion? Seeing none. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council present. The next item on our agenda is board, committee, and commission appointments, and we have Assistant to the City Manager, Nicole Hendricks, here to present the report. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to see ya. Again, my name is Nicole Hendricks, Assistant to the City Manager, and I'm excited to bring forward the recommended appointments to fill some of the vacancies we have on our Budget Committee, Park and Rec Advisory Board, Town Center Advisory Commission, and TIAC, which is our Youth Advisory Council. So board applications are open year-round for people to apply to any of the boards. The majority of those applications are received in the summer. We do a big recruitment push, and the bulk of the appointments were made back in October, and this round is just to fill some of those remaining openings. These recommended appointees are community members who have offered their time to serve our community, and I believe a couple are here tonight. We also have provided council with biographies of those who were wanting to, applicants who wanted to share those. We're asking for all of the resolutions to be considered first, and then once those are done, we're gonna do group photos if people are interested in front of the dais with our little snapshot board. And then there's also some celebratory treats in the back if anyone wants to help themselves. They're more than welcome to. And I think with that, I will hand it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Again, excited for all of you who are here today in person. We really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to having you serve on our boards and committees, and really thank you for the time that you're putting in to help make our community better. So excited to welcome you and have you start here soon in January. Are there any questions or comments? The first motion is for resolution. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was just wondering if we were
Yeah.
going to go, didn't we go through the slides before we did the
Oh,
resolution
so-
to close there? Or I don't know. I was confused. Never mind.
No worries. So we have a couple slides, one slide per board. So yeah,
Excellent.
as we
Okay.
read the resolution, we'll have the slide come up. Victor, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 24-33.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded for resolution 24-33. Is there any discussion? Will the city recorder read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 24-33, a resolution appointing Felipe Aguiar as voting member to the Budget Committee.
Thank you. Youth Councilor Minany, will you give an advisory vote?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council present. Felipe, are you here? I am, yes. Yeah, thank you so much. We're excited to welcome you. Can we move to the next slide, please? The next resolution is for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Candy, are you here? There we are. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 24-34.
Seconded.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Will the city recorder read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 24-34, a resolution appointing Candy Cornelis as an alternate member to the Park and Recreation Advisory Board.
Thank you. Youth Councilor Minany, will you provide an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council present. Congratulations. Can we move to the next slide, please? Next on the agenda is the Town Center Advisory Commission.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 24-35.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the city recorder read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 24-35, a resolution appointing Sarah Serrata and Arlie Payton as voting members to the Town Center Advisory Commission.
Thank you. Youth Councilor Minany, will you provide an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council present. Do we have Peyton or Sarah here? There we are. Hey, Sarah. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. The Tigard Youth Advisory Council for Logan.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 24-36.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the city recorder read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 24-36, a resolution appointing Logan Elliott as a member to the Tigard Youth Advisory Council.
Thank you. Youth Councilor Minany, will you provide an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council present. And I don't believe Logan was here. No? So thank you for bearing with us for that technical procedure of us doing that. And we'd love to have you come up here so we can take a picture with you and congratulate you. We can do one at a time. Sugar yourselves up. You're going to need the energy. And don't be afraid to be the first one to go back there and make noise. I have no judgment. Pick yourself. The next item on the agenda is an update on the Equitable Engagement Project, and we have Communications Manager Wyatt to introduce the item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll just do a brief intro and then turn it over to them. Just want for the folks listening and folks watching this is a follow-up item on a ad hoc committee from the Public Safety Advisory Board. And specifically, one of the recommendations that they asked was to fund an external consultant to review Tigard's current external engagement and outreach efforts using an equity lens and to provide recommendations per path forward. That's what Enviro Issues, Christine and Laura, have been doing for the last few months. Hopefully you've met them out in the community, but wanted to bring them here today. This study goes through June to July, but for them to give you an update on what they've been doing and certainly answer questions and get feedback from you. So I'll invite them up for their presentation.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you. Please come on up. Whoever is speaking, if you could turn your microphone on. If we have more than one on, we get weird feedback.
Pandemonium.
Yeah, so if you just want to start by introducing yourselves, and then we're excited to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and council members. We're glad to be here. My name is Laura Pena. I use she, her pronouns. I work for a firm called Enviro Issues. We're locally based here in the Portland metro area. We specialize in outreach and engagement. And we are very glad to be here to give you an update and over the last couple of months to engage with community even more than we do as local residents. And yeah, as Ken said, we started this work in September. We're here to give you an update on what we've done so far, what's coming up. I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Christine Moses. I'll let her introduce herself.
Dr. Christine Moses, I use she, her pronouns. I also work with Laura at Enviro Issues, and I really bring that equity lens, all of us do bring that equity lens to the engagement work that we do. So you're starting us off.
Right, okay. All right, so we can move to our next slide, please. We've got our agenda, pretty straightforward, so project overview, what we've done up to this point, and then Christine will tell us a little bit more about what we've heard so far, some emerging themes, and what's coming up next. Next slide. Actually, one more. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we've got our project activities and timeline. So this is just a high-level graphic overview of our general process. So we started back in September. We started by trying to understand the current state, of course. So this involves, taking a deep dive through a bunch of different resources and documents, trying to get a sense of where the city's been, where the city currently is, and what the current practices are. We'll keep, doing this work through the end of the year and, continuous, because there's always more to learn about what's going on currently. In October, we switched over to focus on stakeholder interviews and starting to really build community relationships. And that is also kind of a continuous process, although we're starting to slow down this month with those interviews. And we are transitioning over to discussion groups. So these are going to be small group discussions with community members from various groups and identities and backgrounds. We'll focus on those January through March. And then after that, we will take time to synthesize the vast array of input and data that we've already gathered, and we're going to get even more, which is great. And we'll turn those into a summary report and recommendations, and we'll be back to share that with you in the summer. We're targeting June for now. All right, next slide, please. And one more, what we've done. Right, so we have our we started, understanding the current state. So, like I said, reviewing all sorts of reports and documentation. We've also taken time to learn about the city's structure and the different relationships that exist internally and with community members and community organizations. And that has helped us, kind of figure out who might be missing from some of those conversations and where Christine and I might focus our work and the rest of our team. And some really great news is that we found that in a lot of cases there have already been existing connections with the city, so we really haven't had to start from square one in a lot of cases, which we love. Next slide. We have a little more information about our stakeholder interview process. At this point, we've had over 30 conversations through November. We have a couple more scheduled this month, and we'll probably continue, here and there, some additional ones in 2025. And these conversations have been a mix of Tigard staff, Tigard representatives, and community members and community-based organizations as well. And our purpose for these conversations, is pretty straightforward. Just come in with curiosity, and we're trying to listen to understand. Our questions, also pretty straightforward, is really asking just what folks' experiences have been engaging with the city of Tigard in the past and currently, what has been working well and what could be better, what could be different. And like I said, we found the large majority of people that we've reached out to have been excited to talk to us, so that tells us that people are highly engaged and ready to, collaborate with the city to better serve their communities. Next slide, please. So this is a table of who we've heard from, and this is just kind of a smattering of some of the intersectional identities and communities served that we have connected with through the one-on-ones. So you can see we have engaged with people of different ages, different family structures, ethnicities, races, languages spoken, religious and cultural groups, immigration status, business owners, and unhoused communities. And this is, not an exhaustive list. And as I mentioned, this list includes both people who work for or represent, different departments or different functions within the city, but we've also spoken to people who are just active members of the community, who might represent or work for community-based organizations, as well as just community members at large that are, highly engaged. And some of the particular organizations that we have already talked to or in the continuing process of connecting with includes the Tigard Chamber of Commerce, Tigard Tualatin School District, Pact with Pride, which is affiliated with the school district, AARP, St. Anthony's Church, Muslim Education Trust, Summerfield Civic Association, Word is Bond, Just Compassion, to name some of them. All right, next slide. Okay, this will be my last one before Christine takes over. So just to touch on relationship building, this is really here as a way to give you a sense of what our guiding principles, kind of are in doing some of this work. So we have, of course, been focusing on relationship building so that these contacts and connections can continue even after, Christina and I are gone. We want the relationships to stay alive and to continue on with, the city of Tigard long-term, right? Sustainable and long-term relationships. And we know that doing that work takes time, it takes effort, and it takes purpose. So that is another highlight. Christine and I are honored to be able to do some of this work with the City of Tigard and on behalf of the City of Tigard. We have also, tried to stay real transparent with folks as we connect with them to let them know, we're here in our capacity as consultants, what is within our scope and what we, hope that the city will be able to continue on. And, these are connections. Some folks have been really open to this process, and others have been a little bit more guarded, and that will continue to take effort to build out some of those relationships, just like, our personal one-on-one relationships. People come to the table with different levels of trust and different levels of openness, right? So that is something that absolutely translates into this work. And some of these relationships, might take years to really flourish, but it is something that we think is absolutely worth the effort. And we're going to be holding listening sessions and focus groups with community, and we're going to be planning those in conjunction with a lot of the community-based organizations we've already been in touch with. So that is another level of continuing collaboration. We have spent dedicated one-on-one time with these folks, and this is something that early on, Christine and I were planning on doing a lot of these conversations virtually online, but we've ended up doing about half, maybe more than half in person. And, to no one's surprise, they have been really fruitful, just giving people the space and the time to feel comfortable with us, to open up and share more about, their personal experiences. So that has been great. And last but not least, that has also led to what Christine and I kind of call snowball introductions, which is really just asking folks for their recommendations on who else we should be talking to. And those folks have also given us, warm introductions to some of their contacts, which has really helped us make a lot of headway as opposed to us, starting cold from scratch. So that's what I mean when I say that a lot of these connections already kind of exist. So we've been thankful to see a lot of that work come to fruition. And with that, I will pass it over to Christine. She'll tell us a little bit about what we have heard so far.
Next.
Yeah, I'll switch mics.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. So what we've heard. We definitely wanted to start with existing strengths. There are so many. There are many great individual connections that staff have in the community that can be built upon. There's a dedicated team of members connecting with each other. The Safe Routes to School is connecting with Parks and Rec. How wonderful. Those connections are continuing to strengthen the city and its mission and its vision. Seeing city staff and elected officials out and about is really critical. I have heard from the police chief earlier today that this council does a fantastic job of being out and about. And so we applaud you, and even more. There can never be too much community engagement from people from you. Yeah. El Tigre was a fantastic event. The fun, the welcoming events are really critical to the social fabric of Tigard. And you're spot on in terms of hosting those types of events and building those relationships with the school district, with the chamber, and other organizations. Parks and Recreation, I had a wonderful conversation about how they've increased the translated materials. That is a fantastic, tangible step that community members can really lean into, and so want to acknowledge that really critical work. And that Tigard is a desirable place to live. You've made that. Over the years, Tigard is a great place to be and a great place to live, and we want you to know that as we go through this work. Next slide, please. So there are emerging opportunities, and we're looking at this from three main points that about what Tigard is already doing, and it's simply a matter of amplifying to ensure the city is reaching as many diverse populations as possible. So the first thing we want to focus on is helping to deepen and build long-term relationships. As Laura said, it takes years. And as I had the privilege of speaking with the chief earlier today, it's a never-ending process. People leave, turnover happens, it happens inside the city, it happens with NGOs, other community-based organizations. There's always a reason to be able to build those relationships, and then ensuring that they're being handed off within the city government to other people inside the agency. That's a really critical step that we're going to talk about when we write the recommendations. That listening deeply and then following up is really critical. Recognizing a face, being able to say, oh, I might not know your name, Councilor Shaw, but I've seen you before, and I'm gonna feel more comfortable to walk up to you and say hi. And maybe reach out to you because I've seen you in public. Like the mayor was at the Housing Summit. Huge kudos for you, really, huge kudos, because you were out there in that place with those people being vulnerable. And people saw that in you, and I just want to applaud you for that. And engaging in storytelling telling the city's story, telling your success stories, being able to say, yes, here is who you should talk to, or this is what we've been able to accomplish. Those are the nuggets that enable community members to deeply understand that the city of Tigard cares and that you understand their needs. And so storytelling both ways is really very powerful. And then making sure that data-driven decisions are being made because you're asking the right questions from the data. Do we know who needs what? You know, I think your new accounting system will be able to help that. That's very exciting. And there can even be more. Once you get through those initial stages, then you'll be able to go deeper. Very exciting. So next slide, please. Building trust and understanding the city's role in resources. It can be really intimidating to sit here, to come in, to comment. And that's why your roles as counselor and as counselors and as staff to be out in person is really important. It lowers those barriers. There are communities that really have a distrust, but maybe it's a lack of information about what government does or how it does it, what Public Works does, you know, what Parks and Recreation does. You can never assume that everybody knows all the stuff. You just have to keep going out, delivering the information, building the relationships, and being there. And again, representation within city staff and electeds. So the diversification of staff and electeds is going to help build those relationships within the community as the council evolves. It can be hard to navigate the city structure, and we've heard feedback on the webs. It's hard to navigate the website, so there may be some deeper work there in the future. And then our final emerging opportunity, next slide, are clear policies and a consistent culture within the city. The culture of caring and sharing, of answering the question in Public Works about Parks and Recreation. Having staff be able to answer that question and not have to put the person on hold or transfer them 10 times, right? It's like, can we find a way that information, at least that frontline information, is shared enough with all staff members so they can step into that caring position and have that sharing opportunity to be the best customer service person that they can be. So it's not getting lost in a phone tree experience. So what we have discovered and uncovered is that flexibility is really critical, especially in community engagement. Can people get out? Can they go to where the community is? Being able to have that flexibility within people's jobs, to even just have a cup of coffee is really critical. And then shared definitions and expectations around equity, engagement, what equitable engagement is, and what customer service should be like when somebody accesses the services from Tigard. So those are all really important conversations, important definitions, and important ways of showing up over and over again that help the community be able to access and have a really good experience in accessing services for Tigard. So next slide, please. So what's next? we are going to, next slide, please. At least 5 small groups that Laura said. We have potential community groups of BIPOC business owners, Latine, Vietnamese, Filipino, Black youth, Muslim community members, and unhoused community members. We are building those relationships to have those focus groups and conversations in January and February. And in partnership with the community leaders and organizations and the Committee for Community Engagement have been so helpful. The roundtable has been helpful. The chamber has been helpful. Like, just what an incredible group of people here in Tigard. So then the last slide, we will be giving you a final report with recommendations and numbers, ballpark numbers, if depending on the recommendations that we have. We'll be working with Kent to make sure those are in the budget in January when you start working on that. And then recommendations for council actions as well as for staff, because we know this document is coming to you for approval. So that's what we've been up to. It's been wonderful. It's been an incredible experience. And so do you have any questions that we can answer?
Thank you so much, and thank you for your presentation and all your information. It's so important to us to make sure that we see where our gaps are, and sometimes when you're in the weeds, you can't see them. So we're excited for the work that you're doing to help guide us. My question for you is, how are we making sure that the city will continue to build these relationships moving forward, and we're bridging that gap between your connection and our connections?
Yeah, excuse me. We are looking at potential internal systems changes, sharing of information. Is it a shared document? Is it a customer service relationship management system? Is it something like that? Is it just regular meetings and sharing of information? It can be cost-free if the silos come down, and then everybody is sharing each other's relationships. That way you're not treading on other people's toes. You're not over communicating with just a select number of people. And when everybody knows what the mission is and the purpose of each of the events, then your community is going to have a better experience. So it can take a lot of different forms. And so we're looking at that, whether it's in recommending a person or a program or policies or just different procedures. Yep.
Thank you.
Can I add one thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Switch mics, okay. We're also thinking about like the tangible and logistical type of handoffs, right? So Christine and I have mostly been having these conversations one-on-one with community members, but as I briefly mentioned earlier, that we're trying to be real transparent with folks, about what our role is as consultants, and we're, dropping the breadcrumbs to be like, and this is going to be a continuing thing. So, eventually, I think, over the coming months, ideally, we would be able to identify a couple of people. Like I said, also, some of these relationships have already been started by, City of Tigard folks. So it's just reinforcing, what it is that those different groups are doing, trying to align focuses, different goals that different groups have with the city goals, right? That sort of, what's that buzzword? Synergy, right? So just trying to reinforce that, that people are working towards common goals. And also maybe, having a gathering or something, towards the end, some sort of celebration, so that there are, there is that sort of face to name recognition as well. And it's also just nice to, have an informal hangout, and people can go and chat in small groups, one-on-one, and do more of that, sort of informal relationship building that then translates into more tangible work and makes it that much easier to keep talking in, more official capacities. So those are some ideas.
Thank you. Additional questions? Yeah, Counselor Schlack?
Not a question, but just a comment. I wanted to express my gratitude to both of you and your firm for the work you're doing on this topic. When I was budget committee chair, with my first meeting that I was chairing, this was a topic that came up, the topic of equitable engagement in Tigard, and going from that role as a community member now to a city councilor and sort of tracking this project as it's gone through different committees, different forms, finding the right solution for how to proceed, going through different solutions. I just have really enjoyed seeing this process, and I look forward to receiving your recommendations in the summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
Youth Counselor Minany?
I had a question on focusing on asking good questions from the data. Just like, do we have any common blind spots that we missed before, or is it just sort of in general, be careful with the data, or?
Go ahead.
I'm going to repeat the question. How we're thinking about the data, what kind of blind spots are we seeing, or just kind of how we treat the data? Yeah, some of the emerging themes or that people have mentioned is just a little bit of a lack of data kind of across the board, or a lack of sharing data, right? It's like being gathered maybe in a more inconsistent basis, and then it goes into Excel sheets, you know, to die sometimes. So it's a matter of trying to like dig some of those up and see, you know, how the data was collected, if it is something that's worth keeping, or figuring out, you know, how to adjust it. And I think that has to do a lot with figuring out what is going to be the city's, you know, hopefully future equity lens, or, you know, coming up with more of those shared definitions and shared goals and everything to be able to draw a clear connection of like, we're gathering this data so that we can use it for X, Y, and Z, right? So far we've seen that there is a lot of information that's out there, and it's just kind of a little bit disjointed, so it makes it hard to, you know, compare apples to apples in a lot of ways, but it is still useful, you know, in a lot of ways. And the data can also tell us a lot by even seeing what is not available, right? So if there's information that we don't have, or, no, what am I trying to say? Like common complaints, right? What are the things that people are asking for? Like, what are the things that people are actually contacting the city for, right? That's great information. And if we know that they're not asking questions about a new grant program or something, then that maybe implies that that information isn't out there, you know, quite enough, or people don't know enough about, you know, X, Y, and Z. So does that answer some of your questions? I'll also ask Christine if she has any additions.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor Shaw?
May I?
Oh.
Sorry, I also just want to say that seeing the new members being brought in, the new committee members tonight, is your journey, right? That was so wonderful to see the new committee members, people volunteering who want to spend their time in spreadsheets. Yes.
Maybe.
But that's your journey through all of this, and I just want to say thank you for that, for shepherding that. So, yes.
Yeah, Counselor Shaw?
Thank you. And speaking of volunteering, our Public Safety Advisory Board did just a fantastic job, and was wondering if they were part of your stakeholder interviews, both those that had previously served on it and then those that were on it prior to it ending. And then I had one other question after.
I have a warm introduction to two people by the chief. He's going to give me a warm introduction to two different people who were on the committee previously. So, yes.
Great. And would you welcome others if there's...
Oh, yes, pretty please. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
We have talked to a couple of folks already, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then you also mentioned in the questions, who is or who was missing? Who's missing from this conversation? So that was one of the things you started out with, trying to determine. Have you found out who is missing?
I mean, yes and no. I think that's also going to be a continuing process, right? That, you know, continues forever, hopefully. But it, you know, a lot of the groups that are highlighted in that table in one of the previous slides, you know, it's certainly people of color, definitely groups that speak languages other than English. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap there, but you know, in particular Spanish, and I think that's not a surprise to anybody. And that's one of the areas where we have seen a lot of growth over the last few years, and that community has also recognized. So that's, a very positive thing. So it's just more that we know that there's a significant Vietnamese population. We've heard Chukis as a language, which I believe is Tongan communities. And really, the school district has been a wonderful partner in this. They have access to a lot of data that is not covered in like census, or maybe the larger government databases. So just even like one-on-one conversations with teachers and, PTAs and resource, school counseling offices and stuff have been great. And then, and then how all that intersects in other groups. So the minority businesses is a big group as well. Which we also know there has been work with Los Empresarios to support in the night market, Latino night market, a few months ago that Christine and I were glad to be able to go to. So, those are some of the groups, and like Iranian, Arabic-speaking communities, Muslim communities as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I hope that Youth Counselor mentioned the data, and hopefully they'll be able to share their data so that we have that continual contact as well. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate the
What
opportunity.
an honor. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Committee for Community Engagement Annual Report, and we have Assistant to the City Manager Hendricks back for the report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Nicole Hendricks, Assistant to the City Manager. And also relevant to this agenda item, I'm also the Committee for Community Engagement Team Liaison. So the purpose of tonight's agenda item is for CCE, stands for Committee for Community Engagement, and that's why we use CCE. So our committee is here to present an annual report. This is part of their bylaws. It usually includes a summary of the key action items they took this past year, any highlights and accomplishments, and then things to come for next year. Traditionally, this report has been submitted in a written format and emailed to council, but to build connections and just provide more opportunity for discussion, the committee expressed an interest in presenting the annual report. So the PowerPoint and the presentation tonight will serve as their report. And with that, I am excited and want to thank in advance. Want to introduce our CCE Chair, Shayla Katadia, and our Vice Chair. She's going to swap seats with me, Caitlin Johnson. And also just want to recognize we have some CCE members supporting from the audience. And let's see, we've got Jeremy and Connie. Am I missing anybody? No. And then I think Christy is online. So we have some CCE members in the audience. Oh, and we also have an incoming member supporting tonight. So he starts in January, but we have Raphael as well. So we're super excited. And with that, I will turn it over to Shayla and Caitlin for their report.
All right, good evening, and thank you so much for the invitation to come and present to you. We're really excited to share what our committee has accomplished this year. So, next slide. We'll be going over a little bit of the background of who we are, a little bit about what we've done this year, and a little bit about our goals for next year. So, go ahead, next slide. So our committee is composed of 12 members with diverse backgrounds, and this helps our team get feedback from many different communities within our city. We have as Nicole mentioned, a couple new members joining for the new year, so we'll get even more diversity within our group. So next slide. All right, this is just a little bit about our committee. Our main responsibilities are to gather and give feedback to city stakeholders and to help guide communications between the city and its citizens for the most success when it comes to events and various program launches. Next. To get into some of our highlights, we definitely accomplished a lot in this year. To begin, we brought on several new members, and we all worked together to collaborate and develop a shared operating agreement that to kind of guide how we plan to proceed throughout the year. Our team learned a lot about the Safe Parking Program with Kim Ezel. Thank you. We offered feedback based on what we had heard from our community, including concerns or just general misunderstandings about what the program was, and tried to offer ideas for how that communication between the city and the Safe Parking Program team could be refined and cleared up. We also learned a lot about this new utility billing portal and made suggestions to assist in the rollout, ensuring information gets to the public as efficiently as possible. Primarily, one of our big discussions was about language translations and accessing people who are paperless. So, next slide, please. Okay, Judy Martin introduced our committee to the Tigard Community Resilience Hub. We offered feedback on the program and gave suggestions for how the city could support citizens in the event of a natural disaster. For example, the city could look into offering like loaner power banks as an option. We assisted in helping project managers refine their communications about various city celebrations and events. And many of our members were able to attend these events and can offer firsthand feedback as an attendee or volunteer, which is really valuable when, you know, it's not just in theory that we're talking about these events, but we're actually going and experiencing them ourselves. Being able to support these events year after year is really great because we can continue to help the communication plans sort of evolve as the community evolves. Danielle Halther, yes, shared the city's proposed new wayfinding signage design for the downtown area, and our team offered feedback to help refine the design direction before it was then presented to the public for voting. And I will turn it over to Shayla.
You can go to the next slide. So this year, Kim Ezel came back to talk to us about the houselessness task force discussion and about how there's another organization chart and how CCE members can come together to have renewed goals for the houselessness community that includes CCE chart and community members. And we came to a city council meeting to talk about it, so you remember us from that. And you've just heard from the equitable engagement team from Enviro Issues. And what's been nice is they've come to meetings on a consistent basis, have done interactive activities with the committee, and also gave our committee members additional opportunities to engage with them to share about our experiences with the Tigard community. And so I'll mention this in a few slides, but the nice things about these two items is that they are going to be continuing in 2025 and topics that we continuously engage with, so it allows for more sustainability. You can go to the next slide. So just to summarize our accomplishments from this year. So one nice thing is that we can co-create our agendas and bring forward topics that the committee might be interested in addition to Nicole bringing topics from the city and also from topics that you all might be interested in. We also have a new thing called the liaison report, which Nicole brings to every meeting. And so what we do there is she shares what was heard in the previous meeting, what feedback was shared, and how the city responded. So it's a very tangible way to understand how we as a committee are making a difference for the city. As Caitlin said, we introduced shared agreements, which we haven't had before, which allows us to operate in a more respectful, organized manner. We provide event support. So I think a big piece of committee members is that we meet every other month, and in those off months, the expectation is that we will be supporting events, whether that's volunteering or attending and coming back and giving feedback from our experience. Another thing we did this year is we had an opening question where we went around the group and talked about celebrations, curiosities, and concerns about the city. And what that allowed for is more, like if the topics are not on our agenda, it allows us to bring up topics outside of that and share, oh, I've noticed this. What is the city doing about it? Or having a concern of something that happened. And that ties very much into that liaison report, because then Nicole can go back to the city and get answers for us, or get responses or changes. And then, as Caitlin nicely summarized, throughout the year we gave feedback and it was incorporated to result in project improvements. So hopefully we are making a difference for the city. You can go to the next slide. So looking forward to 2025, we are adding 2 newly appointed members. Shout out Raphael already being here. We will continue in community event participation. That is a huge part of the commitment to being on CCE. And then, like I mentioned, we'll continue with the equitable engagement and the houselessness task force topics. We've been hearing about the Tigard service request and giving feedback on that. And so we will continue to hear about that in the Tigard mobile app. And then you can go to the next slide. So just want to give a shout out to CCE members, because we practiced this presentation with them, and it was initially just an information report out, and people suggested we should take advantage of the moment we have with you. And so we really want to get your feedback as well, to think about what are more ways that we can partner with City Council, with the mayor, to engage the community. Are there specific areas or topics that you would like CCE to give feedback on? Are there ways that we can support your activities? So more generally, to summarize it, how could CCE be more effective to be in service of the city? And we can go to the next slide. We just wanted to say thank you to you all for giving us time on the agenda, trying a new way to do this report out, and also thank you to all the CCE members who participate in this group, engage in the city, and volunteer their time. And then if we want to go back to the previous slide, we can have questions or comments, but I wanted to put this back up if we want to have a broader discussion.
Thank you so much for being here today. One of the things I appreciate about CCE is when you come to visit, it's never an unfamiliar face, because I've seen you everywhere. And I think that's a testament to the kind of people who want to serve on CCE. So thank you for being everywhere and serving our community and really giving us such wonderful feedback. Are there questions or comments, Councilor Shaw?
Yeah, just thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to also work with you all, and I look forward to the discussions between CHART and CCE in 2025. And also, I think there's quite a bit of synergy between our presentation we just had on equitable engagement project, and I'm assuming they'll have lots of recommendations that then CCE could take. So I look forward to seeing those recommendations. I think you have a lot on your plate right now, so I don't want to add much more, because I think we're going to get a lot from those recommendations, but just say thank you very much for volunteering, and look forward to Raphael also being on there. So thank you.
Councilor Schleck?
Thank you, Mayor, and second everything that Councilor Shaw said in terms of gratitude and thanks for all the work that you all are doing. I was looking over the list of all the topics that you all have reviewed, and in my 6 months as city councilor, I thought, gosh, you all have covered a lot of heavy topics that I've been facing as a city councilor. So thank you all for providing that feedback and additional community perspectives there. One topic that I know has sort of been mentioned, sort of in passing at budget committee meetings, is we have a social services and community events grant program, and one of the topics that we have is that program is setting funding priorities or funding areas. Last year we set 5 sort of general topics, including hunger, immigration services, and so on. So potentially another area of collaboration that I'm just sort of brainstorming right now could be working with CCE to figure out what should the priorities be for future budget cycles, and then the subcommittee on the budget committee can take it from there. So just an idea. Thank you again.
No, that sounds great. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea, or maybe even offering up a spot to a CCE member to participate in the committee, because it's a big lift. It's a very busy couple of days and a huge lift, but very rewarding. That's a great question for us. I also have a question for you as far as what can we as a city council do to make sure that you're successful as a committee. I do wish I could give everybody more money, so I'm going to suggest maybe don't ask for that. But if there are other things that we can do to make sure that you're successful.
Do you want to try? Okay, I can try. I think, so it's nice to have Councilor Wolf, as the representative. And I think it's always nice to have like two-way communication. And so maybe hearing more, we did this in the beginning of the year. We talked about the goals of the city council, but we've recently been talking about better understanding how the feedback we're giving aligns with the goals of city council, and if there is misalignment, if we're like not meeting, if our topics are not meeting those goals, how do we do better in that space? If that makes
Can
sense.
you think of a topic to help me understand that maybe isn't in alignment? Because I will just say personally, I don't think like our council goals address everything that needs to be done. So for me, I don't think that everything you have to do aligns with the council goals, as long as, maybe the spirit of the strategic vision is in alignment with what you're trying to work on.
Yeah, I can't think of anything, but if other people who are on CCE have ideas.
Yeah, come on up.
I think this was me that brought it up. Yeah. My name is Jeremy Haidu-Pollen. I serve on the committee. As a new member of the committee this past year, I was trying to understand how best to participate in the group, how to engage with the work of the group. And so an idea I had at our last meeting was, if like a city councilor at the beginning of our year could kind of sit down and say, here are the goals that we have as a city, kind of like give us an overview and orientation to the goals of the city council and some of the ongoing work there is, that would help, especially people like me who are new to the committee, see how we kind of fit into how this bigger picture, how it fits into the bigger picture of what's going on at the city. So that's what I was raising at that meeting.
That's a good suggestion and an interesting point, and something we can actually absolutely talk about. I think we're looking at setting our goals at the end of January, perhaps early February. And so by the time it sort of gets pretty packaged up and approved, it's maybe farther into Q1. So that's certainly something we could ask our liaisons to have on the agenda of whatever meeting for perhaps all of our boards and committees to, present to make sure that we're all in alignment. That's an excellent suggestion.
It wasn't so much that we experienced misalignment, as Shayla was saying, but just that we want to make sure that we're kind of not at cross purposes, right?
No, I think it's helpful to understand. Thank you.
You can stay up here and answer questions. That's cool.
Welcome to the hot seat. Yeah, Councilor Slack.
I just wanted to pick up on something you said about being at cross purposes. In a way, I think having that conversation is good because we're elected officials up here and we represent the community. But that being said, there are other community voices out there. And so if we come together and we say these are our 3 or 4 goals for the year, and we go to CCE, we have that conversation. You all are like, I don't know if this addresses some all of the needs that are out there. Maybe there are some other things that you all should consider focusing on instead. I think that's a really valid conversation to have. I just wanted to pick up on that and say sometimes a conflict could be a good thing to have for productivity. I'm stumbling over my words now. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe that's something when your new goals are established and it comes to the committee, then we have the opportunity to say like, oh, well, this is another item that we're interested in that affects the city that isn't necessarily on your list, but we would want to engage on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, there may be things that perhaps don't rise to the council goal level, but are still really important to work on nonetheless, that you absolutely, should feel confident. Yes, please explore and do that. You're not restricted by the council goals, I guess is what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Yes, much better way of phrasing what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate everything that you're doing. And please enjoy a cupcake.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a briefing on food cart development code amendments. And we have Community Development Director Kirkman to present the team report. Welcome.
Thank you. I brought backup as well.
And welcome to Agnes.
Thank you. All right. So, good evening. We wanted to come to council today to give you just a project briefing on our food cart regulations. So, next slide. So, as part of the briefing, the purpose is to provide you with some background on how food carts have been regulated both prior and currently now, and also to receive some feedback from council on how you envision food carts in Tigard, as well as looking at some possible standards and processes that would best suit this type of development, and also a brief discussion on SDC requirements, which are system development charges for food carts and food cart pods. Next slide. So again, our objective here is to find a way to effectively incorporate food carts into Tigard. So food cart pods food carts and food cart pods are an opportunity to encourage small businesses while activating street frontages and encouraging the use of underutilized spaces. What we've seen, though, is we've had an increase in food cart and food cart pod requests, and our hope is to provide clearer direction on how to process these types of applications. So next slide. So a brief history of it. Prior to our Tigard Made code change, which was done in spring of this year, food carts, there really weren't standards for them or approvals for it. Codes and policies were basically interpretations in our code, and it allowed them as kind of an accessory use to existing businesses in lots throughout commercial lots in the city, and it created issues with vesting rights because there was just a lack of clarity in how we would approve those carts, and so we developed the Tigard Made project, the Tigard Made amendments, and with that, we did start discussing food carts. Next slide. So in the actual Tigard Made, we did define food carts, what food carts were, which were carts 3 or less, and food cart pods, which identified a larger number of the carts concentrated in one location. It listed them as an allowed use under our indoor sales and services, and it provided some standards for approval processes for food carts. Specifically, we identified them as temporary uses that were allowed in, like I said, under indoor sales and services, and specifically, the interesting part about it is that while it was identified as a temporary use, they're a temporary use that's indefinitely allowed. So, kind of somewhat of a contradiction. So the issues that we ran across with the Tigard MAID updates is that the process for approving food cart pods as standalone, there were no processes for food cart pods as a standalone use. Oh, I'm sorry, next slide. There we go. And the standards weren't clear as to how we would allow for food cart pods, and it didn't address the impacts associated with the concentration of more than 3 carts on one actual property. And again, food carts were listed as an indefinite temporary use. So we wanted to look at coming to the council now and discuss the opportunities for an update to the development code. Next slide. So some of the proposed solutions we had was specifically setting food carts as its own separate chapter in the development code. This allows us to kind of narrowly tailor the regulations to that specific use, including the processes themselves, and to create a separate application type with fees that are more appropriate for the type of use that's there right now. Because currently right now, if we were to look at expansion of more than 3 food cart pods in, food carts in a lot, it would require us to go through our, what we would normally do with larger development applications. So, next slide. So kind of to set the framework for the proposal, food carts are identified as 1 to 3 carts per property and is generally associated with existing legal uses. Food cart pods are 4 or more per property and are a standalone use. And so we wanted to make sure we kind of differentiated between the concentration of the number of carts on a site. Next slide. So here are some examples of what you would see as food carts. Most of them are usually for throughout the city. Often they're generally considered vehicles, and we don't currently there are currently no actual fees associated, system development charge fees associated with food carts. Next slide. So this is an example of what food cart pods would look like, where you can see the higher concentration of carts in an area, potentially other amenities to associated with those carts. Next slide. Here's one where you can see more fixed structures to accommodate the higher usage in that area. So next slide. Okay, and so what standards we're proposing for food carts. Again, we have identified in the with the Tigard MAID project some standards where we've identified the need for paved surfaces, minimum setbacks, separations between carts, providing some utilities. The utilities on these actual carts are usually not permanent, and so again, the item that we want to focus on too is ensuring that those types of uses when it comes to discharging of fats, oils, and greases are addressed, so that way they're not impacting the surrounding properties as well. And awnings must be collapsed when they're not in operation, so they're very much intended to be self-contained. These again are anywhere on non-residential uses that are allowed, but they have to be legally existing non-residential uses. Next slide. So standards for food cart pods. The next 3 slides will cover it. And again, food cart pods would have more standards. Understanding that with a higher concentration of carts on a site, we'll want to acknowledge the potential impacts they would have on the existing properties surrounding it. And so on this slide, it identifies it as being required in proper zones, ones that are similar to restaurants that we currently have. We want to look at permanent buildings for restrooms because, again, as you start increasing the number of carts on a site, you're creating a more permanent and destination-oriented use on that property itself. So things like making sure we have actual permanent restrooms, buildings that are over 800 square feet are meeting the correct setbacks, as they are, again, more of a permanent type of use as opposed to what you would see with food carts. And again, no temporary storage. Next slide. The other suggested standards are providing a maximum number of food carts on one property. Again, just to determine that, you know, there's probably a set or a finite amount of use of food sales and services that you would want on a specific property itself. So currently, right now, we're recommending 20 food cart stalls on no more than 20 food cart stalls as part of a food cart pod. The stalls are supposed to be marked, so again, creating more of a permanent feature to the actual pod facility. Next slide. And again, we want to make sure we're minimizing the impacts that these uses would have to, you know, public infrastructure. So managing the oddly enough, fat, oils, and grease is one of those key areas that we'd want to address. Again, awnings and that we would want to make sure there's certain standards are set up, as well as looking at adequate transportation and utility connections. Next slide. So with that, that's kind of a brief description of the standards. And what we've gone ahead and done is looked at engaging some of our community members who might have some feedback for us on food cart pods and carts. Our internal stakeholders were Public Works, Economic Development. We have talked to the Chamber, have talked to food cart entrepreneurs, and again, we're here with you all hoping to get some additional feedback as well. So next slide. So timeline-wise, we're looking to go to a planning commission sometime in January with the hopes of coming back to City Council with some finalized regulations in late January or early February. Our request will probably be for an emergency clause because again, we've had a influx of requests for food cart pods, and we want to ensure that we're creating some certainty for our development community as to how to handle these newer uses. So with that, next slide. We'll go into the discussion and question portion of it. Next slide, and we'll back up the questions again. So the questions we have for council tonight is, does the project's objectives align with what the council sees as their vision for food carts in Tigard? Are there standards or processes that you think we should be considering? And the third question is, how would the council feel about system development charge requirements associated with food carts and food cart pods? We'll take them both separately. Food carts themselves, as there are only 3 or less, or food cart pods for larger. So with that, we'll take questions and feedback.
Excellent. Questions? Yeah, Councilor Schlack.
Thank you, Mayor. So just so I can understand the Planning Commission part of it, would they just be providing feedback and approval of the general process, or would they actually be changing the zoning requirements for various areas where we would be having food carts and pods based on the timeline that you have?
The timeline would have us starting the official amendment process, the text amendment process. So the actual establishing the codes in our development code, and we'd first start with our Planning Commission, where we'd open the public hearing to allow the opportunity for the public to provide their feedback, those that haven't, and then for us to get the recommendation to Planning Commission so we can move it forward to council.
Got it. So it would just be the code changes, and then any subsequent zoning changes would be considered separately.
There really is no intent for any zone changes to this, because what we've established is that we think that food carts and food cart pods are consistent with other food carts. We think are consistent with other non-approved residential uses in any zone, and then we've identified food cart pods, which again are larger uses, to be consistent with what we would see for other restaurant area zones that allow for restaurant uses.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. Another question on how neighboring jurisdictions are handling some of these regulations. I was looking at some of the examples for like food cart pods, and I thought, yes, there's one like that in Beaverton. And I'm just curious how some of other cities in the region may be handling this, and if that's influencing the recommendations coming here tonight.
Thank you for that question. My name is Agnes Lindor. I'm a senior planner in community development. So I did look at some neighboring jurisdictions. I got in touch with Beaverton, and Beaverton, they basically allow either trucks to be mobile or they allow them in pods. So that's kind of the distinction there. Tualatin only allows them as temporary uses. They have to be vehicles and remain vehicles. And Gresham does have a distinction kind of similar to what we are proposing. They have groupings of 2 food carts or less, or so 1 to 2, and then anything more than 2 would be a food cart pod. And they have the approval process would be a type 2 process, which is similar to what we would be recommending.
Thank you. One final question. I know we're going to have a discussion about system development charges, and that's an area of the budget, unfortunately, that I'm not as familiar with as I should be. And I know there's a wide variety of system development charges. Are you asking the council if it is interested in having just a new, unique system development charge for food cart pods, or would it just be applying existing ones to this or to them?
Well, currently right now for the 3 food cart pods, we have not charged, we charge system development charges only for fixed facilities. So for water, sewer, in which they have actual, similar to like RV hookups, where they have actual connections into the infrastructure itself, we currently do charge for that. But we do not currently charge for the traffic impact fees that are associated with that use. So there is I guess we are looking for some guidance as to how the council feels about the addition of transportation charges.
And also parks.
And parks, thank you.
Thank you. Those are all my questions at this time.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you very much. Very enlightening. And I'm wondering if there isn't a way, just because it's so confused between food carts and food cart pods, if there's a way we could just further differentiate, just for clarity, but that's just a side comment. You had mentioned provide adequate transportation utility connections with regards to food cart pods. What is adequate transportation? What is that defined as?
Adequate transportation in the standards that we're looking at would be identifying how pedestrians may circulate in the site itself, how again, if it's an existing parking lot itself, how does vehicle circulation impact the actual food cart pods themselves? And so it's a matter of giving us the opportunity to look at additional standards for things like those transportation items. And again, as we get additional direction from council, how we handle the traffic impacts.
Okay, great, thank you. And with the 20 pods, is there, and this is no more than 20 food cart stalls, is there an defined set a number of bathrooms that would go with that, or, and I agree with you, the grease, oils, and the mitigation to ensure that the fats are properly taken care of, because that can really harm a system.
Yeah.
But is that going to be a direct utility hookup? So I'm looking for answers on and just more clarity on the infrastructure.
We are looking at more direct hookups. Like again, some of the food cart establishments have been interested in like the general RV hookups, where you would be able to provide actual connections into a system that would then discharge into the public infrastructure. So that's where we want to ensure that the standards incorporate things like the food. I always get it, fats, oils, and greases properly in a system that allows them to collect it and then to I guess discharge in an appropriate manner. And so, yeah, so I think I answered your question?
I think so.
Okay.
And let's use, for example, on Broadway on 99, they had been approved for, assuming they were food cart pods, but that was prior to this discussion. So maybe clarity on what they are. And then also they had been provided with a TIF grant from the city. And so is there a differentiation between food carts and food cart pods, and who can receive potentially a TIF grant, who would not?
Well, the TIF grant program establishes permanent improvements. And so for that specific location and the proposal, the intent was to create some permanent elements to it. So for the food cart pod component, it would be the actual utility connections themselves. But again, I will leave the actual application. I think there's more detail to it than what's specific to the pods themselves, because I believe that the actual TIF application expanded beyond just the food carts themselves. It may have actually included other amenities on the site itself. So it's a little, I could follow up with you with additional details on it, but for
No, I
the
think that'd be
regulations
great.
themselves. Okay.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I appreciate this. I think that was done prior to this. And so I think as much as we can harmonize just for businesses and entrepreneurs that are coming to Tigard, I think is great.
Well, to be honest, the Broadways and like I said, the other food cart developments that have been coming to the city is kind of the impetus for us to ask for kind of a more aggressive schedule in getting the amendment put together, because there is a lack of certainty when it comes to what the standards are, and in some instances that's the differentiation between the pods and the specific carts are kind of important, because how do we handle a facility where we aren't evaluating them with specific standards and we just don't have them right now. And so it's a matter of making sure we've developed and are mindful of transportation facilities, so that if we're talking about facilities that are off of Highway 99 and we have to bring in ODOT, we want to ensure that we're actually meeting all of the standards that apply to both us and our partner agencies as well. Clean Water Services is another example of one we want to ensure is aligned with how we handle things like the fat, oils, and greases.
Fantastic. That is exactly what I was looking for, and I appreciate both of you working on this project and fast-tracking it so there is some clarity.
Well, we do have to have a shout out for Skylar Warren, who is actually the mastermind of of most of the regulations we'll probably bring forward in the first quarter.
Yeah, Youth Councilor Mainini?
I was curious about the no more than 20 food cart stalls. How did we get the number 20, and are there any places where there are more than 20 food cart stalls?
There probably are. We determined it by looking at other pods and just looking at the intensity of the use itself. And we established 20 with the idea that it was a starting point and it would be an opportunity for us to work with a fixed amount. Some of the other cart stalls that we've seen, range from 15, some are 20, some maybe 25. But again, I would open this up to the public hearing and the opportunity for others to tell us if it's not a good target number. But we established 20 as just an opportunity to know that it allows for a large enough facility so that the type of amendments amenities that you'd want to have, like bathrooms, a potential covered area, there's a cost involved for developments. And so how do we manage a facility large enough for them to recoup that kind of cost for those additional amenities versus making sure that we aren't, creating basically an area that's just kind of larger than we can actually handle.
I have lots of questions.
Okay.
I think just helpful general context of how did our experience with food carts in Universal Plaza help influence, how we decided that 3 are carts and 4 are pods? Or what was the defining factor? You said, for instance, in Gresham, 2 are carts and 3 are pods.
I believe that Universal Plaza was the food cart pods were.
There were initially.
Yeah.
There were initially 2, and this was the 3rd one. I don't necessarily think that there's a huge correlation that we were like, oh, Universal Plaza is 3 now, we should go with 3. So I don't think there was that connection. I think initially we went with 3, and we've kind of built on that because that's what the MAID code adopted, and so we kind of, it's only been 6 months. We really haven't had a lot of time to apply it, and so we didn't want to, I guess, undo something that we just recently did, and so it's more, I think, building on it.
Excellent. I think what would be helpful for this SDC conversation, because we're taking them kind of as 2 separate things, is thinking about perhaps, or I guess better understanding now, for the food carts that are 3 and under, what the current hookup looks like. Are people typically already, are there hookups for water and sewer? How are, versus what we would be asking for a more established large site, which absolutely, I assume at that point, there would be requirements like the RV hookups for each of the areas.
Most of the 3 food carts that we have, the 3 food cart maximum includes the fact that we don't want permanent hookups. That was pretty much what was established with the temporary use. Because again, perspective of redevelopment, if we were allowing for a lot of those hookups, it wouldn't be much in the way of opportunities for redevelopment of a property. If, for say, somebody opted to have 2 food cart pods on the site, we usually require them to be self-contained and not necessarily allow. And in the reasoning behind not having the SDC fees for them is that we do see them as vehicles. The wheels are still on them. They're still mobile. There's the opportunity to have them leave the sites as needed.
So can I ask perhaps a follow-up question where if there were 3 carts and there are permanent hookups, would they then be considered a pod because of the structural requirements or improvements that they made?
I guess not necessarily. I think that the less than 3, basically, I think the distinction is, and you're correct, that is actually a good point, because so I think food carts, if it's 3 or less, we call them food carts, and they aren't required to provide a lot of the same standards as a food cart pod would. But I think the distinction is the number and also lesser standards for a smaller use.
Yes, totally. But I'm envisioning perhaps a scenario where somebody has a smaller piece of property that they have 3 food cart pods, but their intent is to be more permanent, and they put in that structure where they have the permanent hookups, and perhaps want to put in a bathroom or whatever it is. At that point, so in my mind, SDCs come back to the development on the property that takes place, that takes away from future development without having to do redevelopment. For me, that's kind of a trigger point on SDCs of you're developing this property. So for me, it feels like SDCs, whatever we decide them at, is a fair discussion to have. So I guess my question would be, or using that logic for me, food carts would be 3 carts that are mobile and not permanent and those sorts of things. Pods would be 4 or more, or if you have developed the permanent structure. Because I think that, again, triggers that development of the property that would then trigger SDCs.
Yeah. Keep in mind that if there are permanent fixtures, like for water or sewer, there is a charge. When obtaining a water meter, part of the water meter fee is incorporating the SDC charges themselves. So it does get captured when you're looking at permanent structures or like permanent fixtures themselves. We just don't require the permanent fixtures when it comes to the actual food carts. So
Right.
we could add that caveat that, or if there's any permanent fixtures.
Yeah, but then it's the permanent fixtures to me that say this is no longer a convenient use for food carts right now while they're figuring out what to do with the property. The property is then intended to be developed for food carts, which then triggers regular trips and road wear and tear and those sorts of things. They would have to do additional development in order to make it something else. So again, in my head, like going through those logical steps of how I see SDCs and development, 3 food carts that are movable and don't have water meters and those sorts of things, great. You are food carts that have a different lower set of regulations. But if you are 4 or more, or you have that permanent infrastructure where you are establishing that this is intended for food carts, for me, that would then, in our code, consider it a pod, even if it was less than 3 food carts or less than 4 food carts. I'm hearing you, yes, and do you understand like that it's nuanced, but it feels like there's also sort of there has been development that took place.
Yeah, Mayor, I agree with the logic of your argument. I was just, the reason I was making a face is I was thinking one step further of what if we get a mix, sort of situation where, we have 2 that are hooked up and 2 that aren't hooked up, is that automatically a pod because of the number, or, how does, I don't know, just sort of thinking, or, we have 3 that are next to each other, 1 is hooked up, 2 are not hooked up. I just want to make sure that we don't have to come back to council and, amend the code because of some use case that came up because of that additional complexity. But I agree with where you're going with that argument. It seems like if you're hooked up, then that's a different situation than if you're just temporarily there.
Well, so it's almost as if you were hooked up, it should be SDCs, and if you're not, then no SDC. So the number is almost irrelevant.
Well, I would still say 4 or more. I'd like to have the requirements of specific.
Clarity.
Yes, yeah. Of specific, and that's one of. Do you want to respond to? Because I was going to roll into something else.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and again, we can make notes of this and incorporate that in. I don't think it's unreasonable, just because often in the scenario, if somebody's going to hook up to actual facilities themselves, there's a cost involved, because you're digging up the site, you're laying the utilities down, and then you're repaving it. So for a cart to only provide 1 permanent hookup would be, I think, not as valuable as then providing the hookups for all the facilities themselves. But we can, the threshold of adding the hookups is something we can look into in the amendments.
Excellent.
Yeah, I support that proposal. It's just my thought process of additional complexity of requirements. Now you have or statements floating around. It's like, okay, how do we deal with this? So, but I trust your judgment here. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the scenario in case, always looking future forward. How is this practical? So when we're talking about the ponds and we're talking about awning spaces and those sorts of things, are we going to have any sort of requirements for things like eating spaces, covered or not covered? Because I know we're going to require bathrooms depending upon how many food carts, right? Because I think of a scenario where there's 20 food carts, people aren't wanting to get in their cars, right? Even in Universal Plaza, the tables are always busy because people want to get their food typically and eat there and then get in their cars or walk or go away. So will we have specific seating requirements as well? Has that been discussed?
We've left the seating requirements to the development themselves, just because, again, for a successful food cart business, they'll need to determine what amenities they want to include. Do they want it covered? Some of them may not be covered, and for them there may not be a benefit to adding the additional seating and such. I don't know. So I think at some of these, the standards we want to be able to set it's kind of the ifs. If you're going to be here, we're going to require that certain regulations be met, that you have bathrooms. The bathroom requirement, just to be clear, even with the food carts themselves, some of these requirements are mandated by county health as well. And so if you have a food cart, you're still required to have access to a bathroom. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be on site. It could be something that's available, what was it? I think
within a certain distance.
Yeah. So there are regulations that they'll have to meet with county health, but for the actual pods themselves, I think we established standards to acknowledge that if you're going to have structures, these are what the structures should include. The seatings themselves, I think we've left as kind of open and silent.
Yeah, similar to restaurants where we don't have a requirement for required seating for brick and mortar restaurants. And for the pods, there is a requirement that there does need to be a permanent building on the property.
Okay. For the, generally, I think it's for the bathrooms and.
Yeah, for bathrooms.
Other also, yeah.
I mean, they can incorporate it, whatever they want into it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think about scenarios, right? You eat, sometimes it triggers a bathroom needing to go, and if they don't have something properly there, the burden it perhaps puts on the businesses right next door. Anybody ever had a small child in a bathroom, right? Like you're running to find a bathroom because it's always a bathroom emergency. So again, thinking about the practical aspect of, I like having the bathrooms as a requirement. I'm supportive of that.
Yeah, going off the seating thing, just sort of forward thinking of this, if it's incumbent on the food cart or the food cart pod to provide seating for their particular area, I'm just thinking, do we want some sort of regulation around that? If they're taking, their own business property, they're putting it out just sort of in this area that they're going to be using, do we want any oversight of that just at a high level? I don't know if we necessarily need to include it in this code thing, but I'm just thinking of scenarios where for some reason it becomes an issue in the future, and would the city have any way to regulate it or resolve an issue that arises there?
I think what you're hearing from us is we'd like a robust discussion on it and a recommendation to come forward on seating. Because we are not the experts, but I think it's certainly something that we're thinking about. And so perhaps, yeah, specifically around seating food carts here or wherever else, and what that might look like.
In Newburgh, you may want to also do benchmarking because they do have a food cart pod with the exact same tables in the parking area. And I believe those are provided by the actual owner of the property, but you might want to look at that as an example.
I have just a general question. I know I was talking to somebody where food carts generate 9 trips, I think an hour. Was that?
I understood in the ITE manual, I believe that each food cart generates 9 trips.
Yeah, it's a new section of the ITE, and we can clarify. But yes, I believe we'll confirm it. But I believe the ITE trip manual says 9.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the trip generation for food carts are versus restaurants.
So that's a great question. Yeah. And I actually, so Beaverton, so right now with TDT, what Washington County recommends is that we apply the fast food rate to it. It's the most similar use. It's quite high, and so Beaverton went out and did their own studies on 3 different locations, and that trip generation actually was higher than the fast food rate. So they are going with the fast food rate. So yes, it was quite a bit higher.
Yeah, because I mean, people may not, especially if there's 3 carts and under, they're not anticipating necessarily seating, so they're just going in and out. Interesting. Okay, that was sheer curiosity. I think that's it. Do you feel like you have the feedback? I think we gave you robust feedback on SDCs, perhaps additional standards or processes. But yes, I think generally this absolutely aligns with council and making sure that for our businesses and our developers, they have clear expectations on what to expect if they want food carts in Tigard, which we love because it brings such good food.
Absolutely.
And ice cream.
And ice cream. Just to confirm, you all are comfortable with the thresholds between the 3 food carts versus the pods being 4 or more? We're good with that?
With the caveat of permanent structure.
Permanent structures, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed it as far as SDCs go. We're fine with proceeding. The council is fine with proceeding for anyone that has a permanent hookup. Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss that.
Yeah, have the discussion, see what the recommendation is. Because I think there's always an opportunity to perhaps waive them, but there's not an opportunity to charge after you say there isn't. Correct. That would be my recommendation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no non-agenda items this evening and no executive session, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.